On September 14, 1992, I was involved in an aircraft accident. I was working with National Park Service, along with another seasonal ranger, Patty, and the Park Service pilot, Bruce. And we were flying in a 185 Cessna on floats. And we're on a routine hunting patrol.
I was a pilot and I had 2 observers on board with me. We stopped at this lake. We've been flying for a couple hours to get out and take a break.
Before we landed on that lake, we were going to land on a certain lake prior to that, but there was ice on that lake. So what we did was we went a few more miles and picked this other lake, which is a pretty remote lake, pretty small lake almost, you know, like a big pond. We had a real good landing. It was a little bit breezy, maybe 15-mile-an-hour winds. But as soon as we landed and got out, there was already ice starting to form on the floats of the plane. We got back into the plane and, you know, it was still getting a little bit more icy. It was pretty cold out. It was about 25 degrees, and now the winds were picking up a little.
And the wind really picked up and became gusty and turbulent.
Like Stan said, everything, you know, things started to ice up. That was a real concern of Bruce's. Bruce was scraping off the ice on the window, and he was checking the rudders and just making sure there was no ice.
I sailed back to the south end of the lake here and began my takeoff run.
He started going across the water.
The plane was taking off, you know, rather normal.
The left float got off of the water.
The aircraft rolled gently to the right, and it overturned.
The wing hit the water, the whole plane just flipped forward. And then sitting in the front seat, I saw the water, what appeared the water coming up, but we were flipping over.
I had opened my door as soon as I felt that the airplane was going to overturn. As it turned out, this was very advantageous to our survival. It expedited us getting out of the airplane.
And it just kind of rolled right over. And luckily, Bruce opened his door before we completely flipped over.
As soon as we flipped over, I realized once I was upside down, hanging by my seatbelt, what had happened. And at that point, I still wasn't real worried about the situation. I knew what had happened, but I wasn't, you know, quite in a panic yet. And then almost immediately, the water started rushing in. And remember, I was upside down. The door wouldn't open. I couldn't push it open. I didn't think of opening the window. I didn't think of kicking the window out. The only thing I thought of was, okay, I know the door on the other side is open. I'll just go out that door. Started to panic a little bit because I was underwater and I knew the fuselage was full and I didn't know what was really in my way.
My first reaction when I got out of that plane was to swim to shore. Bruce grabbed me and he yanked me and he got me up onto the floats and he said, pull your life vest. I did not pull my life vest. I wasn't thinking about that. The very beginning of that plane accident is really, it was real traumatic for me.
I inflated Patty's jacket. My life jacket did not inflate. I had an inflatable Stearns jacket on.
And I didn't even think of inflating my jacket until he said that. It just didn't even strike me, even though I swam from the plane up.
The wind chill was down around 15 to 20 below zero, and we were completely wet at this point. I knew that if we stayed on the floats, that due to our exposure, we'd be dead. Probably, I don't know if we could have survived a couple hours on there.
Bruce asked if all 3 of us were ready to swim. We would not make it if we stayed on those floats. You know, we would die of exposure, hypothermia. And at that point, I was feeling like, I'm not going to leave these floats. I'm going to stay on these floats until somebody finds us. And I just felt like I couldn't swim those 75 or 100 yards. And he finally talked me into swimming. We decided we were going to do this together.
And I was real scared at that point. No one knows we're here. It's not like we wrecked, we get to shore, and someone comes and saves us. It's not going to be that easy. It was hard to be decisive to even make a decision. You know, I could feel the hypothermia start to come in.
He made that decision for us. I mean, he took charge. He said, you know, we're either going to stay on these floats together and die together, which we don't want to do, or we're going to swim to shore. And we decided to swim to shore together, and we were going to stay together. Bruce and I were pretty much swimming alongside each other, and Stan was somewhere behind us a little bit, but not too far.
And I started realizing, you know, I'm not doing too well. So while I was floating on my back, just getting a little break, trying to, you know, breathe again from choking, my body felt totally numb, especially my arms and my legs, feet and hands especially. And then all of a sudden, all the pain, you know, the pain of the water and the pain of the swimming, the pain of the stress was all going away. And it was a really light feeling. It just felt so easy. It's like, okay, this can all be over. It can be so easy. All I have to do here is just keep laying on my back, and it's just like I'm going to fall asleep, and it's going to be real easy, and it's going to be over. It wasn't really even scary at that time. I wasn't scared. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't even tired anymore. It was just relaxing. And then it hit me that, you know, what I was thinking, because still I was hypothermic at the time, and I could tell I was still thinking slow. And then it struck me that hey, yeah, I'll be here and it'll be all over, but then I'll be dead. And then it got to that's when it struck me that the feeling I was having was the feeling of death.
I recall about midway through the swim to shore, I just started becoming numb, totally numb. I couldn't feel my arms anymore, my legs. And I started becoming lethargic. I got to the point where I could feel myself kind of, you know, my head started dropping, and my eyes started closing a little bit. I was drifting away. And I started thinking to myself, this must be death. This is the start of death. And right before I closed my eyes, I had visions. I had two visions. I had a vision of my mom at my funeral, and I had a vision of all three of us floating on that lake, and the people flying over, my friends flying over, and seeing us there, dead. And for some reason, those two visions made me come to life again, or just gave me a whole different perspective on a whole different strength. And and from that point on, it was all positive. We're going to do this. I started yelling, I remember, at Bruce, we're going to make it. We're going to do it. And I kept yelling this. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
But I could hear Patty yelling, and that also helped a lot in giving me the motivation to keep going, because I didn't know if they were there or not, or if I was going the right way, or, you know, but then when I heard them, it kept giving me the motivation to go, and basically I thought, well, hey, if they made it, I can make it too.
Even though when we got to shore, we were extremely hypothermic, pretty much clubbed from the knees and elbows down. I wasn't able to stand the first couple times that I tried to here on the shore. So Stan came into shore shortly after Patty and I got here, and that was a tremendous relief to me, just to know that we had all survived to shore. But at that point, we were in a real possible death situation because of our exposure, and because we're so remote here, the chance of being located quickly was very difficult.
We met together on shore and started following Bruce up. And Bruce came upon a real sheltered cut bank, dirt cut bank off of the lake.
Bruce found a good little sheltered area that would keep us out of the wind.
What Bruce started doing was he started gathering dried moss and dried grass, but we couldn't, it's like we couldn't grab anything because our hands were just shaking. We were just so cold.
At that point, my clothes were starting to freeze, and my hair was actually frozen, I can remember. My hair was frozen solid.
Stan and I began gathering dry willow, and the willow that was around, there wasn't a whole lot, but we got enough to at least start our fire. And we took out our matches, and our matches supposedly were waterproof matches. The matches, I guess, were fine, but what we struck them on was saturated with water, and that deteriorates it. So, you know, it was useless anyway. And luckily, Bruce had a magnesium striker.
And then we got a little fire started.
The fire itself was very small. I mean, it was no bigger than about 8 inches across. And it's amazing how little of a fire you can have to keep you going.
And I really believe that fire probably saved our lives. Without the fire, I don't think that we would have survived.
It was just knowing that I had to keep this fire going in order to survive.
Once we got that fire going, we realized, okay, we're going to live, we're going to make it.
We told ourselves we're going to stay up all night, we're not going to go to sleep right now.
That concept, you know, honestly scared me, spending the night there, just because, you know, it was just a fear of the unknown. What's going to happen? Is it going to get colder? Is it going to snow? Are we going to fall asleep and die? Or is the fire going to go out?
We had this tiny little fire, and Stan and Bruce and I were just, you know, just honkered around it.
We were trying to get the fronts of our bodies around the fire just to dry out, but we were mainly concerned with our hands and our feet.
Have never been as cold for a sustained period of time as I was that night, and we were all probably as miserable as we had ever been or may ever be.
We constantly communicated, and that's what kept me going. I had no doubt in my mind that we were not going to make it. I knew we were.
But the positive outlook was really good. That's what really kept us strong, kept us going. Just us being together and us being positive together. It was just strong enough to keep us going.
And we knew that it was important to keep a positive frame of mind and really believe that we were going to survive the situation.
We stayed up all night talking and singing and just keeping each other going, you know, keeping each other warm, trying to keep a real good frame of mind about it.
But we spoke a lot about trying to figure out the scenario of what they're thinking of in Kotzebue, what they're thinking of at headquarters. How are they going to rescue us? When are they going to figure out we're gone? How are they going to rescue us? How much time are they going to get? Are they going to find us? Bruce understood the way the plan usually goes in Kotzebue and how these searches usually progress. You know, the planes wouldn't come out at night, but they would, you know, probably come out in the morning. Bruce didn't really seem to be fluctuating. He seemed to be, you know, just stuck in that shiver stage.
I think that I probably didn't regain my body heat quite as quickly as the other two people. It was just so cold.
Well, he had the cotton socks, which were soaked, and his feet were just ice. So I tried to rub his feet, but they didn't seem to be getting very warm.
Since his core temperature seemed to stay low and he wasn't really recovering, he stayed around the fire most of the night. Bruce would keep the fire going because that was very important to us to always keep that fire going for any reason.
And I think that really helped out as far as his, you know, his morale or whatever.
And it would be probably at least into the next day before there were search aircraft possibly here to locate us.
You hear something? Is that a plane? Then we started hearing planes in the distance.
We could hear aircraft searching to the west of us, and we heard an aircraft come from the east.
One of them sounded like they were coming towards us, and then it just veered off behind us. We never saw it. We heard it really loudly. And while we realized, okay, that plane is not going to come find us. The second time, again, we heard a plane. We ran up the hill, and it went up, it was up another drainage, you know, just in front of us. So we were sort of in the center. There was one behind us and one in front of us that went up two different drainages, but we were sort of just in this little void.
You know, the planes were out there and they were looking for us, but they were just missing us. At those times, that's where we got, you know, at least I felt myself morale at least go way down, get real frustrated and actually real angry. You know, just at the whole situation, angry, just at the situation in general, just because of the sheer frustration.
We were real disappointed about that, but we were still real hopeful until it started to become dusk that evening. I felt like we were very vulnerable here. A cold front or a storm coming down could literally kill us quite easily. And so when we weren't going to be located that second night, I became very concerned.
Well, why aren't they here? Why aren't they up the no-attack? We figured, you know, if the search planes are going to come out, they're going to go straight up the no-attack. Well, how could they go wrong? There's something wrong. What's going on? Didn't they, you know, why aren't they here? We hear them off in the distance, but why aren't they here? And so it was kind of like the morale that we picked up all night by being so sure. It's like, okay, all we got to do is make it through the night and they'll get us in the morning. And so it was kind of like a big letdown, disappointment.
The airplanes that were out there weren't seeming to find them right away, and so I got kind of concerned that it might be more serious than our initial thoughts. Since I had flown for the Park Service before and knew the area pretty well, I thought maybe I could be of some assistance. I knew the flight plan. I talked to Warren, and I knew the flight plan, and I knew the mission they were on because I'd done it myself. I knew they were doing a hunter survey. And as we proceeded up the middle no-attack, I noticed a party of hunters and decided that they might be have some information. So I landed on a gravel bar and talked to them, and yeah, they described the airplane approximately when it passed over. They even noticed there was 3 people in it. So I thought, well, this is working out. And they told me which direction they were going, what the wind, what the weather was, and so on. So I figured, well, maybe the hunters are the best source of information. So I started up the river, and I stopped and talked to a total of 6 different hunting parties. And every one of them got me closer and closer to in the right direction. And as I approached Mockpick Creek, I don't know why I went up to check that lake up on the bluff. I didn't think they'd be there because there's no hunters up there, but I thought, well, what the hell, I'm here, I'll swing by there.
We're just sitting around the fire, and then all of a sudden...
out of nowhere, we heard the plane.
We heard a Super Cub coming low from the west, and I'd given everybody the flares, aerial flares, and both Stan and I shot flares at the airplane.
We ran up, and we're waving and making all kinds of commotion and shooting the flare off.
And when I swung by, I found the floats of the 185 inverted in the lake. And we flew along the south shore of the lake and didn't see any survivors, didn't see any bodies. So we were concerned that they were still in the airplane. And at that time, Patty and Stan came out of the willows where they'd been trying to stay warm. Of course, we felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, seeing the plane, that's what really picked us up because we knew where we were at, and we knew the Park Service knew where we were at. We knew that we could be located.
we could see from passing over them that they had no survival gear at all, that all they had was the clothes they were wearing. So I knew they had swam from shore, so I knew they must have been pretty miserable. So we tossed out every bit of survival gear we had in the airplane, and Victor threw out his coveralls.
He was a lifesaver for that.
And they told us then that the helicopter was coming in. But we didn't take anything for granted. Even though the two planes came in, they said the helicopter was coming in. And then finally the helicopter came in. And even at that point, when me and Bruce left the fire pit down, we still never put the fire out. We still never took anything for granted. It was kind of like our trust was, our trust was shaken that day. And we didn't trust anything. We didn't trust that the helicopter would run out of gas or wreck or whatever. So we just realized it was very important. We were taking no chances at that point.
We stayed with our gear until the the two EMT guys came in, and we were hauling all of our gear into the helicopter and got all that taken care of and got into the helicopter, and then they started checking us out.
And then when we got to Kotzebue, everyone was there waiting for us.
I'm glad to say that it worked out the way it did. I was overjoyed, elated when I saw that the three of them were all right.
Wingless angels stand in awe at an eagle's flight, and it sure is a long way home. It sure is a long way home. It sure is a long way home. We are autumn. We are spring. We are part of a moving thing, huddled by the fire. Survivors.